Adventure, fantasy, a world hidden away from other worlds. Find out what this book's all about with the author who wrote what this book's all about on This Week of Becoming Branches. Come on in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Becoming Branches. My name's Adam Cook. Right over there is Pastor Dustin McKinney, and this beautiful angel sitting to my left, my wife, Kristina Cook. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Yeah, was that too much of an intro?
No.
Is it everything you said on the cue card? I didn't miss anything?
No,
I can say I see intelligent.
Yeah, I prefer being on that side of the camera.
Well, too bad, because I'm going to brag. Guys, today is all about Payton City. You're an author, and this book is God-inspired. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to start with, how long have you been an author?
I've been writing characters for probably 20 years. But
Characters in general, or characters for a specific
No, characters
purpose?
in general. I started making characters up in my head and working out their backstories and what motivated them before I really knew what it meant to write characters. Mm-hmm. That was just something I thought was fun to do.
There's no bigger character in her life than me, and I'm sure that when she met me, she was freaking out because this isn't the character that she wanted.
Well, I'm sure you inspired quite a few characters.
Yeah, it's right here. The dedication page. For my husband Adam, this adventure wouldn't exist without you.
There you go. I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I hope it means something good.
Well,
I've
already have a question that's come up. So you mentioned that you have been creating characters like you remember like in your head. So you're like one of those kids that had like imaginary friends.
No, I pretended to be characters.
Okay.
So I pretended to be Snow White or Dorothy or Sleeping Beauty, but I didn't have. I don't know. I don't think I had imaginary friends.
All right. Well, do you remember who the first character you ever developed on your own? Mm-hmm. Tell us. Who is this character?
I think I was in middle school, and her name was Tsunami, and she had like water powers.
Oh, that's unique, and yeah, that makes sense. That tracks.
That tracks. And so I would like draw pictures of her and like try to think through what her story was, what her deal was, and so she didn't have a lot of offensive attacks, but she was a very defensive character.
Which is weird because tsunamis are very offensive.
Yeah, they're very
destructive. Whatever they don't get to the shoreline and like, just kidding. I'm going to sit here as a water wall.
No, I was a middle school girl, so it was more about the aesthetic, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I was into Japan. So.
Which you still are into the Japanese culture. So with Payton City, and I know a little bit of inside on your thought process, but I'm going to pull it out of you like a dentist pulling a nasty tooth. This, you said becoming an author, and this book in particular was God-inspired. Can you go into that? What the Holy Spirit told you, the reason you wanted to create this book, and kind of go into that?
Yes. I realized several years ago that I had a gift for storytelling because it wasn't hard for me to dissect stories and understand them, and it's just sort of it was a natural thing. And so when you have something in your life that's a natural thing, usually that's something that God has given you. Mm-hmm. And so I can remember Pastor Roger was teaching one Sunday, and he was going through this little part about the parable of the talents. And I just thought, you do like diagnostic check. You just sort of see, all right, am I using this for God's kingdom? Well, I can sing and I help lead worship, so yeah, I'm using that. Am I using my strategic mind to help the God's kingdom? Well, yeah, I use that to help the church in communications and things like that, and developing Streamside. So yeah, okay, he's giving me that. I'm using it.
Big time. I will attest to that. She is a lifesaver here at the church.
So then I was thinking through the whole storytelling thing, and I thought, well, if it's a talent and I'm not actively using it for God's glory, then I don't want to get to heaven and God say, I gave you this one and you didn't do anything with it. I just want him to say, I gave you everything and you used everything that I gave you. and that's it. That's all I want him to say to me. So I started, when I was in high school, I had this idea for a story, and it always lived in the back of my brain. And then as I was going through college and getting married and starting a family, it never went away. And the other little stories would pop in. And so I had two big ones in my brain, and one night, it was actually morning, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. This was probably 5 years ago.
Was that the where you hit me over the head and said, "Wake up, I got an idea"?
Yeah, it was that.
I remember that night.
Yeah, I used that bamboo pillow that's really heavy.
It's like, bang, boom, I've got this idea for story.
So almost, without the hitting him over the head, I did just sort of wake up, and I thought, these two stories could be the same story, because I had, and all of a sudden it clicked into place, and I started writing Hayden City, and I always knew what the title would be for the first one, because I knew the founder of Hayden City a long time ago. He was a character that was well established, so that's, I guess.
Well, that's awesome. So, if someone who is watching this that wants a good adventure, can you do like a quick synopsis of what this book is going to bring and your view for, because this is a series, correct? And how many books are you?
Probably 4. If I could do it in 3, I probably would, but I don't think I can.
So 4-part.
Probably.
4-part series. So, and you have the stage. This is all about this book and what God's leading you. What's this book about, and why and what are we going to expect in Hayden City?
Okay. So, it's actually really difficult for me to tell.
What? Who else to tell it? Who else to tell it but the one who wrote it?
She doesn't want to leave out any details.
It's not so much about leaving anything out. It's about not giving away too much that hasn't happened.
There are some twists and turns. Now, Pastor Dustin, you've read it.
Yes.
Let's do this. What's your view of?
Have him make a synopsis.
Well, first of all, I will say I love this book. It is an excellent story, especially when it feels like today, like writers, like I have to inject all of these worldly things in order for a story to be good, in order to be entertaining. And what I love about this book is it has none of the garbage, right? So none of the garbage, and an even better story, right? So you have kind of this post-apocalyptic, there it is, kind of world. I don't want to give away too much either. So there's this city, right, Hayden City, which is in a dome, to protect from the outside world. We still don't know what happened. We don't know why they had to go into a dome, but within this city are some very unique characters from all different walks of life. And you have this city that's split up into different districts, and these different districts have different values. They have different ways of life, but they all are an important part of keeping this city moving and running and operating. But what's really cool is that each chapter, for the most part, 99% of the time, you get to see Hayden City through the eyes of a specific character. So there are some main characters. I think that's okay to share. So you have like
you have
Oren.
4 point of view characters,
right? And this. Because I'm also reading the second one, which is super exciting. It's really good too. It's really good. You want to introduce your characters? Your 4 main characters?
Well, I mean, there's 2 characters who are at the sort of the height of the civilization, sort of the cream of the crop, and so you have Oren and Berithra, and
so just to stop you there to give you guys some context. They're like your upper class, very wealthy.
Basically, think of aristocrats.
Yes.
In probably a society, Victorian England, you could say.
And so, what's kind of like the time period that you can kind of, not exactly, but kind of where this fits that we would, as readers, lock into?
Okay, so if you are familiar at all with the sort of steampunk genre, where there is a Victorian aesthetic, but they have technology that's more advanced than the Victorian era actually had, and there's a reason for that, which has not really even been explored in any of the books yet.
Is it weird that I'm thinking of BioShock?
No, it's not
The video
super
game?
weird. It's
You
not
never
as
played Bioshock?
creepy as Bioshock.
Okay. Well, kind of Bioshock. I'm not saying
No
the
big
creepy
daddies
aspect,
walking around.
but I'm just saying that because they're kind of like that
Yeah.
steampunkish,
Yeah.
kind of a post-apocalyptic vibe.
And I don't want to get too much into the weeds of the story because someone might be watching this who doesn't care about it, which is totally fine. But you have these aristocrats, and you seeing the city and the plot that's unfolding from their perspective, and then you also have in sort of the worst part of the city, basically the dregs, or like the dilapidated Detroit. You've got this
Go
lawkeeper.
Lions.
Yeah, go Lions, good job. That one shining beacon of hope that Detroit has as their football team.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, that the characters you're talking about, and again, we won't give too much away because you really need to read the book, are two of my favorite characters, come from that slum, that rough cop streets.
Yeah.
And it shows, and what I love about your writing is it totally shifts. Like when you switch characters, it is literally like, oh man, this is a whole new slate, and what's going on. And I think that's one of the things. And I won't go too deep into it, but there's some characters in there that portray the streets and the grut and then it's so different from the district of the ooh la la district.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, well, and inside the city, right, with anywhere you go, there's always there's struggle for power, right? There's those who are visionaries, those who are just out to make maybe people's lives a little bit more miserable. And so you have all of this in play in Payton City. But you also have things going on in another place.
Yeah, and so when you get to a certain part of the book and it shifts its setting
Dramatically.
and it shifts everything, and you are taken to a completely different place. And basically all of the second part of the book is a completely different story. And so the reader is trying to, with a character called Eric, and very more of a primitive village, sort of a jungle society, and so you're trying to figure out, well, how are these connected, because they shouldn't be. But as the story goes on, you realize how they are connected, which hopefully surprises people a little bit at the end.
Yes, I was very surprised, and so as a fan of the book, I am like super interested in the whole like creative process. And I know I've asked you like a million questions, but like I'm always interested like in the order of things that they happen. So like, do you develop like in your mind? Have you developed the characters first, and then you think about where they're going to be and what they're doing, or do you have this larger story, like the setting, the places, and then you later insert certain characters into the setting? I don't know. How does that all work?
I have been heavily inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien, who basically is the standard for fantasy. His Lord of the Rings and Hobbit works, and the Silmarillion and the Cottage of Lost Place stuff, like to a lesser extent. But the Lord of the Rings really set this standard for what fantasy was, and people are still drawing from that wealth of his creativity today. And what he did was he made the world. And that's and Lewis, another point of inspiration for me, he did something similar with Narnia. And so you have the world, and to Tolkien, the world was as much a character as Frodo or Aragorn or Gandalf. And that's the approach that I've taken. And so Ithay is a planet for all intents and purposes. It's a fictional planet, but nonetheless, I have tried to make it as realistic as possible. And so knowing the world and knowing the history of the world, then I have this sort of timeline that I can pull from, and I say within this timeline I'm focusing right here at this point in history. And because I think you could make the case that like World War II was a very impactful time for the planet Earth, right? and maybe other points in history not quite as impactful. So this is a particularly impactful point in Athea's history.
Gotcha.
And so when I know that, then I can say, okay, well, what do I need to tell this story? Who do I need to tell this story? Now, some of it is I have a character in mind, and I know this character is going to exist in this story. Like Arthur Payton, I knew. A.E. Payton, I knew. You are in the story 100%. You were there before I really even knew what it was going to be all the way about. But then you have some characters, like the cop character, the lawkeeper, Nerea. I didn't really know what I was going to do with her. She just sort of grew organically out of the world that I was starting to build. And so you have, it's not one or the other. It's sort of like, it's all of it.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
So
one thing that I know that you told me over the months of you writing this, that I always appreciated as a Christian, you kind of associated this author to author. So God is the author of life. And you said being an author, you putting the characters, you know the story, you know where you want your pieces to go. Explain what you told me, how that relates to how you view God as the author of our lives.
Yeah, it has given me this new perspective on how amazing God is. Because I'm not in Athea, right? This is a thing that I have written. It's not real. And in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. It's words on a page, right? But God has created this world that is real, and we're in it. And I have created characters, but they don't have free will. Sometimes I'm writing them and I think, oh, Oren would do this thing, so the plot has to take a different turn because he wouldn't do the thing that would maybe make it easier for me to make a plot point happen. Oren would go a different way about it, so he's gotta, so they have personalities, but they don't have free will. God has created this world that is real, and we have agency. The choices that I make are mine. And from that perspective alone, just that's so amazing that he has this depth of love and compassion, and he knows so much more than we can fathom, and that he's created this. And as we're going through our lives, as we're sort of characters in history, I have this perspective because I know him, because I trust that Jesus saved me, and he's the only way for me to, or any of us, to get to heaven. When I finally get there, when my time here is done, I have this perspective that God's going to say, so, what did you think? When at the end of time, when everything is done and the final justice has been wrought, I have this sense that he's just going to be like, and we're all going to say that was the best. That was the best story. Because there is nothing that gives me more excitement than seeing people talk about things that I have written, and me not even being a part of it. Just watching them enjoy something that I have made is it's like a nourishing thing. Like, okay, I'm not just doing this thing to do it. I want God to use it, but he's so faithful that he gives me some nourishment from hearing that other people are enjoying it.
Well, I can tell. I mean, just listening to you speak now, you can obviously tell you are very passionate about this, and it pours. I mean, it obviously comes through your characters and through the world. Like that. This is not something that you are flippant about, obviously, but this is something that you've cared deeply for a long time. The details, the intricacies. When you're describing even a room within Payton City,
Your mind does paint the picture.
Yeah, like so not only like is your passion there, but you're right. God has gifted you with writing. This was I was reading another book when I was reading this book, and this person was not a good writer. It was so refreshing to go back to Payton City because you are a gifted writer. So I do have one more question though. Mm-hmm. So at some point, you mentioned that this has always kind of been in the back of your mind, and at some point, whether it was you mentioned Pastor Roger's sermon, you made the choice that I'm going to step out in faith and I'm going to do this, and which in my mind would take a ton of courage. Because I mean, you're putting your gift out there for the literally, for the world to see.
Here,
yes, and also,
what do you think?
and also for the world to criticize.
Yeah,
like so that really does take a lot of courage. So I want to ask you about that a little bit, and what were maybe some of the hesitations or things maybe the enemy would try to say to you or tempt you with about not to write this book. Don't put it out there. And how did God help you to take that step of faith and to have courage and to write the book?
I had a professor in college who was super rude about his criticism, and there was one time that he just eviscerated me in front of the whole class. And he wasn't wrong, but he was not nice about it. Mm-hmm. And that was a very useful moment for me, because I realized that not everybody is going to appreciate something that I have made, and that not every true thing that someone says is going to be good to hear, and it's not going to make me feel good. And so I really held on to that moment, when I was thinking through how am I going to get this thing published, because I kind of came to the point where I said, if I can sit through that experience, I'm pretty sure that I can make it through anything that anyone would throw at me, because in that moment I wasn't giving it my all, and he knew it, and so he just sort of shamed me there, and that was his teaching style. It's like working for house.
What are you gonna do?
I thought I'd get your theories, mock them, then embrace my own. The usual.
It's a great parenting tactic too.
Yeah.
Shame your children
But he's not my dad. He's my professor. It's fine. My dad is the opposite of that.
Yes.
My dad's awesome. Yeah. But I had to just sort of say, it's okay. It's okay. So that sort of prepared me to make something and put it out there, and you have to be okay with someone taking it and ripping it up. And now with Payton City, I'm not being half-hearted, and so I'm pouring all of my intent and my passion into it, and because of that, I think it stands up better than that particular assignment that I'm remembering. So I didn't really have any hesitation to put it out there. I think my biggest struggle is just, is it going to go anywhere? Is anybody going to see it? And because I decided to self-publish, because I didn't want marketing trends to dictate what the story would be, and that was my fear in a mainstream publisher. So my biggest fear is just, is anybody going to see it? Is it going to be able to go anywhere? And am I going to be enough to publish this thing and promote it? And I'm still learning how to do that.
Yeah,
the enemy didn't stop me from doing it. I knew I was going to do it, and so it wasn't a should I or will I. It was okay. Once this happens, is it going to go anywhere?
Yeah, right. Well, I appreciate your obedience. And sometimes that is the toughest thing to do, is to leave those results up to God, right? What is God going to choose to do with this? But I appreciate your obedience, and I know that He blesses obedience. So I'm excited to see what that looks like.
Yeah, and I'm just, as, from this side, watching her, be a mother of three, have her own business, be a part of the church staff, do stream side, and then find time to write. And I can attest, there's been clicking of typewriter at 1:30, 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, because that's when she had the time to do it. So just that her obedience to, Lord, you wanted me to do this. Like you said, it takes a lot of guts to okay, Lord, you're literally walking out on the water towards Jesus, and it is scary, and you do see storms and criticism will come, but like God uses all things for good, and I think He uses that time where that teacher brought you down, because you could go into this full of pride. You could, I mean, because authors do that, artists do that all the time. It's all about them and their success, but you're like, Lord, take this and use it for however you want to, and I want to give you glory. And I don't think whether it sells 200 or 200,000, your obedience to God is at the heart of the matter. So that's good stuff.
I just decided He's going to bring the right people to this book, and this book to the right people. And I'm going to try to promote it. I'm going to do my best. But at the end of the day, He's the one that's in charge of everything. And I think people are hungry for stories that are that touch on eternal themes and have truth in them, because we live in this postmodern, like, wibbly wobbly, everything is gray time, and the stories are so hard to connect with, and they're nothing. It's just, so I'm very I'm very critical of stories that I don't see as being worthwhile, which
is 99% of everything we try to watch together. Shows are impossible to watch with her. She makes it about 42 seconds into a show, and she rips it apart.
I don't like
movies.
I love
Them.
If I don't love
Them.
I don't.
Watch them.
Normally hates the main character, and we end up watching a cartoon. So, guys, I highly recommend Payton City. It is a fantastic book. There's going to be 3 more books out there. You can pick up a copy. Tell them where to pick up a copy real quick as we close this episode.
You can find it on Amazon, and it's an ebook and also like obviously physical book.
And we will put links on where you can buy that book down below. I highly recommend it, and you can buy it on e-reader or get a physical copy. I'm very proud of her, but I'm biased, and it's a great book. Guys, thank you so much for... What?
No.
What?
We have to ask, when can we anticipate book 2?
So I'm working towards February of 2025. I have a novella that I'm writing right now.
I love novella wafers. You know, they put those in banana pudding. They put those in banana pudding.
Banana pudding. It's a special place in my heart.
All right, so February,
That's
potentially.
The goal. That's the goal.
All right. I just want to make sure our readers know that, because once they read this, I know they're going to want book 2 like ASAP. Me being one of them. So.
And over the winter, we are going to do an audiobook.
Let's go. And who's going to voice that, Adam?
Me. I'm going to voice it because the budget was there for her.
if he can make it through my
pronunciations of these names that are impossible.
Maybe pronounce it this way. You can try it.
So guys, look forward to book 2, February 2025, the audiobook, hopefully in the winter, Lord willing. And thank you so much for the author of Payton City, K.L. Cook, on this week of Becoming Branches.
See you guys.